In this exercise, I'm going to give you some tips regarding building Photoshop files for use in Catalyst and getting those same files into Catalyst. To get yourself started, I need you to launch the middle8.psd file located in your exercise folder in Photoshop. And when Photoshop opens, you'll see that it is essentially the same file that we created earlier in the Illustrator file, but there's a little bit of difference here that I think you really need to pay attention to. The first difference actually is over here in the Layers panel. You'll notice that the Choices layer is turned off, and if we twirl it down, you'll see why. These are the two artboards that we had in Illustrator, and we can't use artboards or multiple pages in Photoshop, so they go in their own layers and sublayers and are turned off. The other thing, of course, is that these two pictures here are eventually going to be used as buttons. So what I've done is turn off the text under the picture so that we can bring it into Catalyst but not have it show up on the Catalyst screen. Everything else that's here is pretty well self-explanatory, but I want you to, again, pay close attention to naming and layering. Everything's on a layer and everything has a name that makes sense. Now, with the layers, you can apply tons of effects. And let me just open up a layer here. You can see that you get all kinds of effects that you can add to these things. You can put drop shadows on them. You can go into filters. You can just do practically everything under the sun you would want to do with this, but be very, very careful. If you apply effects, especially things like drop shadows and things like that in Photoshop, you might want to not do it. Let Catalyst do the simple stuff. If you are going to be applying multiple effects and things like that to smart objects, flatten them and bring them into Catalyst as flattened objects rather than with the effects, because they may not come in. The other thing I want you to be aware of are these hidden layers. Remember, these layers are hidden for a reason, but you can bring them in Catalyst. And speaking of which, let's bring this Photoshop file into Catalyst. So I'm going to quit Photoshop. Now, I'm not going to save the changes. There have been no changes really made to it. I'm going to launch Catalyst. And when Catalyst launches, we're going to be taken to the welcome screen. And you will see on the welcome screen, of course, various options available to you. And it's Create New Project from Adobe Photoshop PSD file. Multiple layer Photoshop files are always saved as PSDs. Select from Adobe Photoshop PSD desktop over to your exercise folder. There's the PSD file we were looking at. Click open. And again, it will just build the file. Now it's going to ask you about the artboard. In other words, the size of the document, 300 by 500. What color are we using? That's there. Notice that it's also going to allow you to edit the image layers. If there are any shape layers in there, it will crop them down or flatten them. You want to just crop them and keep text layers editable just in case there are typos, you can fix them. And import non-visible layers, absolutely. By the way, this is a default, and you really don't have to worry about turning it off, or turning it on, I should say, because it will turn on for you. The advanced is rather interesting. If you twirl this down, you're a Flash guy especially. No, it's just pretty self-explanatory. That's a little movie clip there. But you can see that you can actually determine how to bring in each layer, whether it's text or an image, how you're going to bring it in, with a bitmap with the editable layer style or as a flattened bitmap image. So you can do it here or you can do it in Photoshop. I'm just going to cancel this and start the process over again. So we'll just come back to this. There we go. And we click OK. And it analyzes the file, builds the file, brings the layers into Catalyst. It loads them up. And you can see there's the state. There's the layers that we had in Photoshop. They're all there. The project library has all of the graphics that we brought in from the Photoshop file. The main difference is no pages like we had with Illustrator. Well, here's what you can do with that. You can just select your state, duplicate it, and because each state is independent of the other one, this state's layers are visible here. So I can turn on the choices, and we'll make this the dine in, and I'm just going to go to View, Fit Artboard in Window so you can see it. And I don't need this stuff, so I can just turn off the selections and the main. And there we go. There's the main page. And if I click on this and go to Dine In, we come to this screen. So there you go. There's how you can bring in Photoshop documents, construct them for placement in Catalyst, and how to take multiple layer Photoshop documents, bring them into Catalyst, and make them multiple state documents.